Welcome back to another episode of What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur. I'm Vincent Lanci, speaker and author of the book Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption. Want to know what it's really like to be an entrepreneur? Well, you came to the right place. Whether you're already an entrepreneur or looking to start your journey tomorrow, or just someone who needs a little extra motivation to get through the day, this is the perfect podcast for you. This is the place where you will learn exactly what it's like in the world of entrepreneurship and hear authentic stories of entrepreneurs grinding on each episode. My goal for this podcast is to help you realize that giving up is never an option. If you missed the last episode, be sure to download it after you tune in today. Before I introduce my guest, I'll share another entrepreneurial story to inspire you all. Today, I will introduce Jimmy Iovine. Here's some highlights I read from this entrepreneur write-up where he talked about 3 startup success secrets. And if you've seen the Netflix docs, the Defiant Ones, then you already know who Jimmy is. He was the co-owner with Dr. Dre of the rap labels Death Row Records and Aftermath Entertainment. He was an entrepreneur in the form of a recording engineer at first. He was in extreme demand in the 70s, working his way up to work with legends like Bruce Springsteen, John Lennon, and then also Tom Petty, U2, and Stevie Nicks in the 80s. Now he's a tech billionaire, how times have changed. His message to startup businesses came in the form of these 3 statements. First was use your fear as an advantage. With the greater the level of the responsibility comes the greater level of fear. Instead of paralyzing yourself, analyze it and learn how to tame it for it to motivate you to achieve a success and greatness. The second was continually refresh your roadmap. You can try to get as many wins as possible and replicate that method on a consistent basis, but everything goes stale eventually. And third was to leverage threats into opportunities, and I really liked this one. He said, when business is going well, you look great. The decisions you make when times are difficult show your true value as a leader, and I definitely agree with that because if decisions prove correct, your firm is more resilient than ever. But Chris, what would you like best about that story?
Yeah, I think first off, Jimmy Iovine's definitely an idol of mine. I've watched that documentary several times. I think there's a lot of good points in it, specifically the first point around, turning your fears into strengths. I think, anytime you do start a company, there's a lot of uncertainty and it can, discourage and scare a lot of people, and sort of embracing that uncertainty and almost appreciating it is definitely liberating and allows you to, execute rather than worrying about, downside risks.
I love the way you put that. And that voice you all just heard is the sound of today's guest. I met Chris back in high school. We both graduated from Northport and we became friends in class, maintained touch over the years. And when I started this podcast, I looked into my network as well as reaching out, DMing, cold calling. And I thought of Chris because he's had a great startup now over a year. He's been making a lot of noise, and I thought it'd be great to have him on the show. So Chris, why don't you please share your story a bit and then touch on what you're working on today?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, I grew up in Long Island in a place called Northport, son of 2 amazing parents. I grew up really not liking class and not really liking school or really valuing it personally. And I was told, sort of my whole life that I had, ADHD, I couldn't focus. I really spent my time focusing on sports. I love playing sports. I ended up going to Siena College on a lacrosse scholarship. I studied finance, but there again, I didn't really fully commit myself to school. Through college, I actually got a job working in finance in Manhattan at a place called Cowan and Company. I was there for 5 years. By the time I was 26, I was the youngest director in the company. By that time, my job was essentially selling research on the stock market to New York City-based hedge funds. And the different sectors I would focus on were consumer, internet, and really trying to, identify my edge. And really, I found that was my age. I knew internet, I knew the social media apps, and I knew, consumer behavior better than, the 40-year-old clients that I was, covering.
Right.
And eventually that led to we were the first U.S. investment bank to write research on the cannabis market.
Okay.
And there were no public stocks at the time in the U.S. because it's federally illegal in the U.S. But in Canada, in October of 2018, they went legal on a federal level, and there was a couple stocks that IPO'd on the NASDAQ, and they sold cannabis in Canada, and I ran that process. And through that process, saw an opportunity in U.S. cannabis, and the times were changing, and the high-level thesis was CBD will become legal in the U.S. and the market will skyrocket, and then THC will be shortly there behind, and the brands that are set up in CBD are best positioned to take advantage of THC because they have the legal know-how, they have the supply chain expertise, and they have a community of customers that already trust their products. So that once the dispensaries open, there's going to be 10, 15, 20 brands in there. People are going to recognize the brands that they've seen online through CBD. And so that's really how Highline created and was started. And now we're a year in, and here we are.
Great. Now it's time for the Big Five, Chris. On each episode, my guest and I go over these 5 questions to help you, the listeners, learn what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. You ready to go?
Yes.
Great. Now, number 1 here is we may have just touched a little bit, but we definitely need to hear some more detail. When did you realize that you weren't happy with what you were doing, or you needed that exact change to start this entrepreneurial journey more full time? Were you unhappy with finance, or what was going on in your head?
Yeah, I think I was in a bit of a unique situation because I really did like my job that I was at. But, it's a lot of, when I first got there, there was massive upside. And by, a couple years in, you get promoted a couple times and that ceiling becomes a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to start a company, and I really made a commitment to myself when I was 22 or 23, working for a couple years, that I would leave, a 9-to-5 before the age of 30 and start something. And I held that promise to myself and really sort of kept that idea and that momentum in my head, and, ended up leaving on the 27th. But for me, it was not about hating my job and not wanting to work for anybody. I have no problem doing that in the right situation. I think that for me, it's just a fear of regret. I don't want to look back when I'm 40 and regret not taking a risk and, regret working at a 9-to-5 my whole life.
Exactly. So I got to ask you, at that time when you made that self-promise to yourself where I'm going to be my own boss by 30, what business sector did you think you were going to enter? What were you thinking at the time?
I was really agnostic to the sector that I would go in. It was more so I wanted to check 2 boxes. I wanted to believe and love whatever I'm doing every day. So for me, I couldn't just go and do a product that just made money. That I don't really necessarily believe in. And so for me, I wanted to love what I do, completely believe in it, and then also, and it sounds cliche, but make the world a better place. What I mean by that is just doing something better. I want whatever the company that I started with to do, leave the world a better place than where I started. So for example, Juul. Yeah, it's $1 billion idea, but I wouldn't be able to go to bed at night knowing that I created that. So just keep it within those guidelines and then really just see what happens.
Absolutely. I learned the hard way that money isn't everything, to the point where it's not really doing any good. It's helping people. I thought my whole life I wanted this corner office with this finance degree and make this 6 figures and this and that. And then when I started doing it, I realized how limited my overall potential was. And there was more for me. I made that full switch to full-time entrepreneur after maybe 5 or 6 years of making ends meet once my book came out. And I do sleep well at night, and I love what I do every single day. I look forward to waking up every single day because of the laundry list of stuff I still need to do from the day before. I'm into it, man. But now that you're on this full entrepreneurial journey from that 9-to-5, What are one or two of the most difficult parts you'd say is being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think there's so many different directions that you can take,
Yeah.
and there's so many different strategies that you can deploy, and to really just not second guess yourself, to trust your process and to trust your own gut. That's something, for me, I always try to be diligent about, like not overthinking, like make a decision, stick with it, and try to just try to set yourself up so that if you do make the wrong decision, your downside is not great. So just test little things and put yourself in a position to fail, and make it okay to fail, and just put in a process so that you learn from each failure. And I say that in quotes because it truly is not a failure, especially when you consider everything a test and what is a failure. And so really not only deploying that mentality to myself, but also trying to establish a culture that allows that, and that, that does not get lost in translation as we build out our team. So definitely, I would say implementing culture is definitely a challenge. And it's something that take really seriously. It's a constant evolution.
You have
And
to, yeah.
then B, I think for us in particularly, we're a team of three, and we're all very good friends. And we've always been friends. Brendan, I've
Yep.
known him since I was 8. Ken is the other guy. He was my college roommate, played lacrosse together.
Okay.
So, we're well aware that over 90% of businesses that have friends at the core fail, just like 95% of startups don't make it through a year. So we're very aware of those statistics, and we try to play offense on them and address them, and try to implement a culture that separates and distinguishes between, friendship and professionalism.
Absolutely.
Which is, again, it's harder said than done, but I think being aware of it is a big step.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it before the episode, how the team is everything, the company culture is everything. You could have the number one skilled player at a position, for example, but if you have a bunch of non-reliable teammates or what have you, it's not a good thing. But like you said too, with the startups, how many don't make it past year one? I think as entrepreneurs, especially with my medical history, expectations are just that. It's just what somebody's expecting. Just because most people are expected to fail, just because the trend went that way, that doesn't have to be you if you work hard enough. But let's piggyback off what you said about failures, Chris. What is one of your greatest failures or lessons learned, and what did it teach you? Why has it stuck with you? Let's paint that picture.
I think, first off, make a million mistakes and a million lessons each year. And so it's hard to pick one. But, I think actually I've learned a lot of lessons through sports, and one that comes back to me is how I ended my career playing lacrosse in college. We played a team in a championship that we should have won. We should have beat. Absolutely, they scored 10 unanswered goals in the second half, and we lost. And I was the offensive captain on that team. It unfortunately falls on my shoulders, and I think just going in the future, thinking back to that, I hated the feeling of that being the way I ended my career, and I always found myself second guessing what I could have done differently to change that outcome. And then, I really just tried to, I was 26, 27 years old, thinking back to when I was 21, thinking I did things differently. And I tried to put myself in the position of, okay, what are you saying to your 27-year-old self when you're 40? And the first thing is easy: call, spend time, and really value the relationships with my family. And to really spend time, because that's the absolute last thing I want to regret. Yeah. And then the second thing was go take a risk. Why are you working at a job your whole life? Get comfortable with the downside, get comfortable with, completely failing, which meant, okay, you start this, let's say I'm completely broke in 2 years and it fails. I'm 30 years old. I'm starting over. Get comfortable with that. And then once you do that, it's liberating.
Absolutely.
So I would say just like not regretting things and to leave it all out on the field, give it your all.
Absolutely. Another Northport alum, you remember Francesca, she said, she was on one of the earlier episodes saying, get uncomfortable. I challenge you to get uncomfortable and step outside your comfort zone. And it's the truth. While you're younger, your degrees don't expire. Your degrees that you earn don't expire. You know, you still have degrees. You're still a hard worker. And all of the experiences that you now have from running your own business can add value to any company. I definitely agree with that.
100%. I think you need to be cognizant of like the curriculum at school and what you've been taught your whole life and sort of the norms for society, because you're really taught as a student, your whole life you're taught to how to be a worker and how to be an employee, and that is what the curriculum is based to do. It's ancient curriculum, and it's set up as if you're still looking to get a job at the Ford factory and work your way up to a manager in 10 years and live behind a white picket fence with 2 kids. Right. And to me, that is the thing I'm scared about the most and what I'm trying to avoid at all costs. So, yeah, I like being in the sink or swim situations. I mirror Francesca's sentiment.
I like the pressure, and I honestly enjoy the rush of having to earn every step of the way, because you literally start with nothing. You're at the zero ground floor where you have no credibility, respect, no reason for anybody to return your call. And you start to slowly get the ball rolling. And if you could choose to have a conversation, Chris, with any entrepreneur, we're talking dead or alive, who would it be? Where are you? Let's paint this picture now.
Well, that's a good question. Probably Bezos, just because, and the CEO of Amazon, just because he is sort of like he's probably the best operator in the world right now. And
can't argue with that.
And he's got, and it still seems like it's just first inning for them. And just being around him for an hour, you probably learn so much. Probably Jeff Bezos.
What's your favorite thing that Bezos is doing? Is it some of the new stuff with the space exploration, or is it how he started from a bookstore online? What's your favorite part about him?
For me, the most interesting part about him was how he was so early and that nobody even realized what he was doing until it just happened, and it was there. It was there. And there were shareholders that were obviously funding him, investors that believed in the vision. But other than that, I mean, you look at their stock was like, I forget, $250 for about 10 years, and then all of a sudden it's $2,000. And it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of humility to be seen as wrong for like 10 to 15 years and eat a lot of criticism and be seen as completely wrong, knowing that he doesn't need to win those arguments. He has people that are funding his idea. He doesn't need to go out convincing people. He's just going to execute. And then 15 years later, boom, you see who was right. And so just having that confidence and that humility to withstand like that pressure for a long amount of time, having the 100% conviction in his idea, I respect a lot. And I think that I try to draw similarities from that because, I mean, you should have seen people's, like, let's put it this way. When you go to Christmas and you tell your family that you just quit your nice finance job to go sell a form of cannabis, they look at you like they're absolutely, like, you're insane. And like, even my parents like got it a little bit like, wow, Chris is doing that. So like having the confidence and also having the buy-in from my parents to support me and to not feel the pressure to like convince people and to validate the idea. I like, and I definitely try to draw similarities from.
Yeah, it's definitely important to keep people in your circle who are supportive, and that's a great thing. But Chris, now that Highline Wellness is on its feet, it's made certain milestones. Let's look into the future, 1 year and 5 years. We'll start with 1 year. where do you see yourself from today? And let's also touch on anything you didn't touch on with Highline to catch our listeners up. And then we'll look at 1 year out.
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, I'll Highline Wellness is a New York City-based CBD company. We are predominantly direct-to-consumer. Our hero products are our CBD gummies. We sell 3 different CBD gummies. Night gummies, which are our best seller, which are melatonin and CBD. They put you out like a light. Anytime gummies, which are just gummy bears, 10 milligrams of CBD, and then our day gummies, which are 10 milligrams of CBD, and then B12 for energy and focus. So 95% direct to consumer, but we're also in Saks Fifth Avenue, Lord and Taylor, soon to be Urban Outfitters and Nordstrom's, as well as 150 other sort of like mom and pop fitness studio stores. And we have really used influencer marketing. All of our delivery and all of our brand ambassadors are right now through Instagram. Going forward, we're looking to diversify that and to go sort of more national and away from focusing strictly on New York. Going forward, what you can expect from us is right now, Governor Cuomo announced about 2 weeks ago a plan to legalize cannabis in 2020. And so, our thesis was build the CBD brand online. And then when New York goes legal, we will have brand recognition and brand equity from CBD. That
super important. Oh, yeah.
To THC. And we feel like there is a ton of products in cannabis, but very few brands. And so we're trying to create a brand first and foremost. Some of our notable brand ambassadors are Danielle Bernstein, or We Wore What, Olivia Culpo, Nina Agdal.
Olivia Culpo, really?
Yeah, she's never tagged us, but she just did a big what's in your bag, and a big interview, and she had 3 of our gummies in there. So that was some pretty cool press.
Wow, yeah, definitely. Yeah, cool,
yeah.
Man.
So, we're just trying to build a brand and trying to get the product in, the people in the hands of people that can help spread the word, and look to expand into THC and to go after a license to sell the packaged goods in New York dispensaries by the end of the year.
That's a good 1 year vision. 100% about that. Now let's look a little deeper. Let's look 5 years. What do you got for me?
5 years is essentially take that same thesis of how we're approaching New York and apply it nationally. So, our government is certainly not operating as a well-oiled machine right now, but at the end of the day, we are a democracy. And when 79% of the constituents, are in support of legal marijuana,
yep,
it becomes a matter of when and not if, and sort of what that looks like. And so we're taking the view that that's going to happen. We're going to build our brand specifically in New York for THC, and then try to scale nationally as it becomes federally legal in the U.S.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And something I plan on doing as season's out, having some of my guests back so we could touch up once you hit some new milestones and market you again. But Chris, thanks so much for coming on today. I know our listeners.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a pleasure. Thank you. You've been inspiring to watch, and definitely kudos to you for sharing your story and for what you've built in such a short time.
I appreciate it. I know our listeners see all the value in your episode today. I personally learned how you really personalized, how you took that leap, left a job you didn't hate because you believed in your mission and you had a future vision for it, where you're going to build a brand, lay the bricks brick by brick, and do everything right and not rush it. And that's probably why you're still sustaining. But it's time for the last word, Chris. Is there something you want to share today with the listeners that we didn't get to touch on yet?
Yeah, so I'm always trying to find out, what could deliver the most value to whoever is listening. And it seems like, if you're listening, you have interest in becoming an entrepreneur. And my suggestion to you would be to do the work. And what I mean by that is, if you have an idea, there's absolutely nothing that can stop you from doing the research and knowing that market and that idea better than anybody in that market. And I think that one of the reasons I had success raising money and pitching investors and those types of things is because, yeah, I didn't have the capital I needed to launch a business, but I was willing to quit my job and dedicate my life and to learn a space that I knew better than anybody else. I think that knowing the research and really knowing it like the back of your hand, whatever you're trying to do, is the first step. And don't really ask for help and don't try to validate your idea until you have that step covered. And once you feel confident, you'll know it and you'll believe in it. And then that's when you can take the next step to quit your job or to ask for money or to really execute on your idea. But don't do one before you do the other, because you won't take yourself seriously, and people that you need to rely on for capital and for operational expertise won't take you seriously either if there are questions that they're asking that you don't know cold. So that would be my biggest advice.
That's unbelievable advice for everybody listening in. Please listen to that. Maybe rewind that again, because that's some great advice when you're out here trying to start your own business. But Chris, what's your social media for the company or website, ways for our listeners to either purchase your services, reach out to you, all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Highline Wellness Instagram is Highline Wellness, HIGHLINE Wellness. www.highlinewellness.com, and my personal one is Chris Roth 16. And I will, right after this, make a code for all the listeners. And what do you want the code to be? It'll be for 20% off. What
Very generous. Thank you for doing that. I guess just make it entrepreneur.
All right, cool. Entrepreneur. No, that's too long. People won't know how to spell it.
Let's
podcast. No. Vinny 20.
We'll do Vincent 20, because someone will mess that up. Do Vincent 20.
Vincent 20. VINCENT for those non-spellers out there.
Yeah. So everybody listening in, if you haven't really been familiar with CBD yet, looking for a new brand, check out Highline Wellness. They got great ratings. They do things by the book the right way. It's very nice of you, Chris. Thank you. And everybody, remember to check out the show on Instagram and Facebook at your favorite morning podcast, or on Twitter at Podcast by Lanci. My handles are at Vincent A. Lanci on all social media and YouTube, and my website is vincentalanci.com. Be sure to check out my book, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, on Amazon now, but be sure to DM me or email me. I want to hear what you think. If you enjoyed today's episode, please continue listening and rate What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur 5 stars. I work hard to find value delivering stories for you on each episode. And as always, I'll follow the last word with a quote that inspired me, and know it will for you too. Each day provides its own gifts. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next episode of What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur.